Hey folks, it's Kennedy Hawk from the MCM team here, and I am here to conclude our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box villain scenario coverage with our last S.H.I.E.L.D. guide slash villain primer, all about the last scenario in the box, and he's kind of a mystery, so if you haven't played the box yet or haven't been spoiled by the title of our episode, tune out now. You've got 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1, okay, it was Baron Zemo. So let's get into this Captain America nemesis turned into a villain. So just like our normal hero primers, we're going to go through our introduction, our scenario overview, and the hook for the scenario. We'll go through some tips and tricks and the main cards within the scenario, along with our hero evaluations for our classic 9 heroes. We'll look at some aspect solutions and helpful cards for the scenario, the recommended modular sets from FFG, and a boost icon overview before wrapping up with my final thoughts about the Zemo. So, let's get into the scenario hook. This is actually for people that don't like to play Marvel Champions, but like to play the game Clue. I have a picture of Clue Jr., Avengers, Loki's big trick. I thought that was really thematic because Loki was kind of the first mystery villain at the end of the box. And now we have the exact same thing, but with Baron Zemo at the end of the box. The mystery villain that we all didn't expect, but maybe kind of expected. So in this scenario, you're going to be gathering evidence, and kind of like you did in Clue, where you tried to figure out the location and the murder weapon and the murderer. Here you're trying to figure out the means, the motive, and the opportunity that one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. officers has betrayed you as a member or ally, I guess, of S.H.I.E.L.D. And you're going to have to make that accusation just like you do in a game of Clue, and if you're right, good things happen. If you're wrong, bad things happen. So we'll talk about it when we get into the scenario. So let's look at the villain card first. So Baron Zemo is a double-sided villain. You'll be using the A Baron Zemo in Standard and the B in Expert. In the A Baron Zemo, he has 3 scheme and 2 attack. And in the B, he has 4 scheme and 2 attack. 4 printed scheme. That is a large scheme number. He has the Thunderbolt trait, and then the Thunderbolt Unmasked trait on the other side. So let's read his A1 and B1 sides here. He has a forced interrupt when Baron Zemo would be defeated, reset his hit points to 12, remove 3 secret counters from among the board member environments. In expert mode, it's the same thing, but reset his hit point counters to 16, so he's restoring himself to full health. So he's a repeatable villain in this first stage, the A1, B1 stage. Later, after you make your accusation, Baron Zemo will flip over and become unmasked. At that point, he gains the normal villain sort of thing. In Standard, he has 18 hit points per player. In Expert, he has 22. And then he has a forced interrupt when Baron Zemo activates against you. Either place 1 secret counter on a board member card or give Baron Zemo an additional boost card for this activation, and that does include schemes. In Expert mode, it is when he activates against you, either place 2 secret counters on a board member or give Baron Zemo an additional boost card. So that could be 2 boost cards with 4 scheme, or these fabled secret counters, which we'll learn about here in a minute. So next, let's go through the main scheme progression, at least main scheme 1. So the contents for this scenario are Baron Zemo the villain, obviously, and his encounter set. We have the S.H.I.E.L.D. Executive Board encounter set, and the Executive Board Evidence, and the Standard encounter set, and then 2 modular encounter sets, Recommended, Scientist Supreme, and S.H.I.E.L.D. You're going to prepare the evidence, which it tells us to see page 18 of the rulebook, which ironically tells us to see page 5 of the rulebook. And then you're going to put the board member environments into play, and if not playing in campaign mode, they will start with secret counters on each of them. So let's go ahead and we'll look at the gathering evidence, but first let's see what happens in 1B so we can get a reference of what this evidence is. B ends at 12 threat per player, and if this stage is completed, the players lose the game. Bad. It starts at 2 threat per player and goes up 2 per player per round. So in 4 player, that's 8 threat a round. Your Justice player might have a hard time keeping up. There's a response. After the player phase ends, the first player may place 2 secret counters on a board member environment that has no secret counters on it to gain 2 cards from the S.H.I.E.L.D. envelope. 1 card instead if in campaign mode, and then the players may advance to stage 2A to make their accusation. They don't have to advance to stage 2A, so you get to linger here for as long as you want. So let's go ahead and look at this setting up of the evidence, in case you don't want to go to page 18 of the rulebook and then immediately to page 5 for the actual instructions. Alright, so here we say you're preparing evidence. What this is there's a modular set called the Executive Board Evidence. It never gets shuffled into the deck. But the way this works is these have special setup abilities in campaign mode and in other ways. But in our game, instead of using these special setup abilities that you can unlock in campaign mode, we're typically using these as evidence that we want to figure out who this villain is, or who this traitor is. So at the beginning of the scenario, if playing in, which we're not talking about campaign in this, we'll have a whole video on the campaign. If we're playing in just standalone scenario, you're going to have 3 means cards, 3 motive cards, and 3 opportunity cards. You're going to shuffle each of those stacks separately. They have different card backs for the 3 types. I'm going to take one of each of those cards and put them in an AIM envelope in a specific way so that when you open the envelope, you can't see what's on the cards. And you're going to want to gather those cards and get that evidence. Those are going to determine who the traitor is. I'm trying to remember what's going on here now. And then the other 6 cards are going to get shuffled into a shield envelope, and again placed in a certain order, so that if you view one, you can't see the next one, and things like that. So there's going to be 6 pieces of evidence that you can gather from that main scheme 1B. Remember, we would get 2 cards of evidence in standalone mode if we place those counters onto a shield executive that had no counters, and then we can make our accusation. So as we're gathering evidence, we're going to reveal, once we have 2 means, say we have wiretap and medical records, only the security scanner is left. Or the 3 types of motives. If we've gathered money and an ideology words from the motive, then blackmail must be their motive. And if we already have our security clearance and travel from opportunity, then we know authority was the opportunity. So if we look at the last page of the rulebook, or the insert for this campaign box, for each of the 3 executive officers of S.H.I.E.L.D., the medical officer, the surveillance officer, and the tactical officer, there's a means, motive, and opportunity column. So if those 3 cards are the cards in the AIM envelope, that tells you the identity of the traitor. So we can see right here, the pink thing for means was the security scanner. So if we have determined that the means was the security scanner, there's only one combination with the security scanner that would be the medical officer, but there's 5 different combinations for the tactical officer. So as you're gaining evidence, you can kind of hedge your bets and pick an officer early, maybe before things go out of control. That's a little bit counterintuitive because generally the second phase of Baron Zemo is more out of control. So you kind of want to linger in the first phase for as long as you can gathering all this evidence. So a lot of times it doesn't make sense to hedge your bets. But sometimes it's fun to do just to cause chaos, because you're the first player and you get to decide. So let's go ahead and look at these officers. So here we can see there's a chief medical, chief surveillance, and chief tactical officer, just shadowy figures that have setup. They all read, if there are 4 or more secret counters here, or 3 or more in expert mode, flip this card over, and that's a bad thing. So they're going to start on like sort of the helpful side. And they each have a hero action. The medical officer wants you to spend 2 energy, surveillance 2 mental, tactical 2 physical resources. And then you get to remove 1 secret counter from the card. With the medical one, you'll heal a damage from a character. With the surveillance officer, you'll remove 2 threat from a scheme. With the tactical officer, you'll get to deal 2 damage to an enemy. These officers are going to help you out as you're removing secret counters from them so that hopefully they can help you gather evidence. But if they ever reach their threshold of 4 or 3, they are going to flip over. So here, let's read the medical officer's aid when this card flips over. It becomes an attachment that says attached to the villain and permanent. It's still a board member card, and it has a forced response. After a secret counter is placed here, either heal 2 damage from the villain, or deal 1 damage to a friendly character with the fewest remaining hit points. So all of these became buffs for the villain when they flip over. On top of that, medical officer's aid gives +1 attack, the surveillance +1 scheme, and the tactical officer +1 attack. So these villains could be monstrous by the end of the scenario. Each of these board members has a different ability: tactical officer dealing damage, surveillance officer doing threat, a medical officer dealing damage or healing from the villain. And they all have this passive text that says if there are 3 or more board member attachments in play, the players lose the game. So if 3 of these cards flip over, we have lost. So we cannot allow these secret counters to build up onto the scenario cards. So what happens when we make our accusation? We're going to have to pick one of these officers to accuse as being the one. So let's say we wanted to pick one. We would decide to advance to scheme 2A at the end of the hero phase, and that 1B triggering. Some flavor text, you've gathered all the evidence you can. All that remains is for you to make your accusation. When revealed, make an accusation by guessing a means, a motive, an opportunity, and the associated board members. So you're going to have to guess 4 things. 3 of the things will lead to the 4th one. You can't guess like a means, motive, an opportunity, and a non-matching board member. You also probably wouldn't want to. But it says and the associated board member, right? So that board member becomes the accused. See page 19 of the rulebook, which is actually on page 19 of the rulebook. Then we're going to go to stage 2B. When revealed, do the following. Use the cards in the aim envelope to identify the true mole and find out if you were right. For each guess you got wrong, place 1 secret counter on each board member. So that means if all your board members had 1, because you just placed 2 to gather some evidence potentially, then if you got all 3 wrong, if you got the motive, the means, and the opportunity wrong, you'd be placing 3 on each of these board members. They would all flip over and you would immediately lose. That sounds bad. On top of that, if you accuse the wrong board member, you'll also place 3 secret counters on the accused. So if you chose the wrong means, and that board member had 0 on them, they would get 1 counter placed on them for the wrong means, 3 more counters for being the accused, and they would flip over and no longer be on your team. They would be supporting Baron Zemo. Then we're going to advance to main scheme 3A. So this is just like an event card, basically, that tells us how to transition from 1 to stage 2 of the scenario. So if we go to 3A, we have a when revealed, flip Baron Zemo to his unmasked side, and reset his hit points to his printed hit point value. Find Baron Zemo's sword and attach it to him, so we're always going to get an upgrade on the villain. And then 3B loses at 12 threat per player, goes up 2 per player per round, starts at 0, but when revealed, flip the mole to its attachment side and attach it to Baron Zemo. So if you guess the wrong character, you're now going to have flipped 2 characters, the accused that was wrong and the mole. So you only have 1 officer left on your team. Then you're going to place 1 per player threat here for each secret counter on each board member attachment. So if there were a ton of board member attachments out there because maybe you got some things wrong, a bunch of threat is going to get dumped on this scheme, and you're going to have to do some cleanup before you can actually progress towards defeating the unmasked Baron Zemo. Really fun, really engaging, really dramatic if you have people like me that are agents of chaos. So let's look through some of the key cards in this scenario. We have Baron Zemo's sword. We mentioned that's going to come out in every scenario. It's a weapon attachment that attaches to Zemo that gives him +2 attack, and after Zemo attacks and defeats a character, place 1 secret counter on the board member environment with the fewest secret counters. You have to spend 3 physical or 3 energy resources to remove 1 secret counter from a board member environment and discard this card. So you do get kind of a bonus of removing a secret counter when you get rid of that sword. We have a really cool thematic attachment called Reluctant Foe. When revealed, you're going to search your collection for a hero whose title does not match a character in play, which could be impossible if you played with 4 core set heroes and had Maria, Nick, and the 5th core set hero out there. But, let's assume you have enough heroes that you can go find one. Probably a Miss Marvel, because she's a 1/1/1. You're going to attach this to that character. They're going to gain Villainous. Their attack is their attack. Their scheme becomes their thwart. And when defeated, you remove that hero and Reluctant Foe from the game. Super fun when it comes out. We've got 2 copies of Shield Agent, which is a 2 scheme, 1 attack, 3 health character with Quick Strike and Vulnerable. Forced Interrupt, when Shield Agent activates or is defeated, add 1 secret counter to the board member environment with the fewest secret counters. I'm glad they say with the fewest so you can't trigger to flip something from this. And this is different in Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the scenario, because in Phase 1 of the scenario, this might just be preventing you from getting evidence. In Phase 2, this might get placed and deal damage to a character or heal the villain or something else. They do have Quick Strike, so they'll get that ability off at least once, and then again later when you defeat them, so they can be real nasty. We also have, and that's a way that secret counters can get placed on cards, which is terrifying, right? We also have Might Makes Right. When revealed in Alter Ego, place 2 secret counters on a board member environment with the fewest secret counters. So going to Alter Ego, a little bit dangerous. And then we have a when revealed hero, Baron Zemo attacks you. If no character takes damage, remove 3 secret counters among the board member environments, with 2 copies of that treachery. So that's really cool. So there's treachery cards that can help us remove secret counters and manage this like tax. This is something we never got in Nebula or original Marvel Champions design when we had these taxing scenarios. We never got things that help us manage them. Usually that just snowball to a villain slapping us in the face. So it's nice to see things like Might Makes Right and Baron Zemo's Sword. So this next page has all sorts of other cards that help us remove secret counters, which is really, really cool of the scenario design. So we have 2 copies of the Treachery Battle of Wits, which has a Hydra picture on it. When revealed Baron Zemo schemes, if this activation would place any threat on the main scheme, you may spend X mental resources to prevent X of that threat and remove X secret counters among the board members. Very, very powerful. He might scheme for 4. If you have 4 mental resources, awesome. Let's clear a complete board member and go about our day. We also have the ends justify the means. When revealed, choose Baron Zemo defeats the minion with the fewest remaining hit points, Baron Zemo schemes. Or, discard an ally or support you control, remove a secret counters from among the board member environments equal to the discarded card's printed resource cost. So you can sacrifice something, to justify the means, but with the ends. You know what I mean. We've also got 2 side schemes, both that have a when defeated effect that remove 1 per player secret counters from among the environments, so one way or another it could be really powerful in this scenario. So this is great. A bunch of cards that help us manage these taxes so we don't feel like we're just dumping our entire hand into secret counters every single round. So let's go through some general tips and tricks for the scenario. My first tip and trick is that guessing, it says often not worth the risk. It's just not worth the risk. Don't do it. Just go through 3 turns, gaining that evidence, try to clear an officer each turn, get 2 evidence cards, or 1 in campaign mode, and know exactly who that officer is going to be. You really don't want 2 of those officers to flip because you had a whoopsie. So if you guess the wrong officer, the accused will flip, and then the mole will immediately flip, and if your 3rd character had already flipped, you've just lost the game, which sounds horrible. So do not guess unless you absolutely need to survive a scenario. If you need to survive, you're probably going to lose in the next phase anyway, so at least make a guess and see how it goes. But my argument would be never guess, just try to clear up those officers and get all the evidence you can, which maybe isn't like engaging in like the risk reward of the scenario that they had designed, but it is a better way to probably win the scenario without making it harder on yourself. My next tip or trick would be think about how you're going to remove those secret counters. There's a lot of cards in the deck that will help you remove those counters, so finding those cards and revealing them can actually be helpful. In Standard, you can spend 6 resources to remove 3 counters just from the officers themselves, or just deal 12 damage. A lot of times we can do 12 damage for like 4 resources, and then we get to play our fun cards, which is probably a little bit more fun than just, spending resources and sitting there. That being said, since you spend 2 physical and deal 2 damage to something, spending those resources can be really advantageous, especially in expert mode where it takes 16 hit points to defeat Baron Zemo to get rid of those 3 counters. I'd much rather spend 6 physical resources, get 6 damage onto Zemo, and have removed all those counters. So I think it's a little bit of a game there, figuring out how you're going to remove them, but make sure you have a plan of how you're going to remove counters from all of these different environments. Next, just pay the tax on the sword. We know the sword's going to come out. It's going to come out every game that you try to win, because you have to go to stage 3 to win, and when it's revealed, the sword comes out. So make sure you don't build a deck that doesn't have enough physical or energy resources in it, because you want to be able to remove that sword. The trigger to go to stage 3 does happen at the end of a hero phase, so you're going to have to suffer 1 round with that sword out there, but you get to pick when that round happens. So if you look across your team and nobody has the 3 energy or physical resources, then maybe choose not to advance that round, because you don't need to suffer through this for multiple rounds. Trigger the round when you're ready to remove the sword immediately, and you'll be much happier. And the last trick is to use the good old Green Goblin trick, right? The biggest thing we would always do in mutagen formula is we would linger around in phase 1 of the scenario where things are easier to control. To Green Goblin phase 2, he would deal a bunch of encounter cards and we'd just wipe him before those encounter cards even come out. He has almost the exact same health as Baron Zemo, so it's totally doable with this new expanded card pool. He doesn't even deal encounter cards, so if you take 2 rounds to get rid of him instead of 1, still a very powerful thing to do. So use that to your advantage. You know you have more control in phase 1, so stay there where you have more control unless things are really getting out of. Okay, let's look through our hero solutions. So we're going to look through those 9 heroes. I would say easy mode heroes are ones that have big money, so you can trigger all those resource environment removals. Ones that can burst and then pivot, like destroy the villain, get all that damage in, and then start managing threat. Not tempo where they're chipping away at damage and threat. I feel like that is a little bit more B tier here. And you definitely want someone on your team that can thwart. That nasty 4 thwart on the expert mode Baron Zemo adds up quickly. Hard mode, I would say, are characters that just like to rush. They like to ignore the threat. They like to ignore the things happening on the board and just go all out on face. A lot of times they can't handle the treachery cards that come out that help. Treacheries and side schemes that help you remove counters. And they become a little bit overwhelmed. And characters that want to build too long. You can build, right, because you can maintain phase 1. But while you're maintaining phase 1, you're having to pay taxes. That means you're building slower, which gives Baron Zemo more times to chain into double advances and just ruin your day. So, rush and build characters, a little bit of a struggle. Alright, so let's look through our Guardians. I think Gamora is a B-tier character here, kind of middle of the ground. She's more of a tempo character. She can kind of maintain threat while dealing damage, but is going to take a little bit longer than someone that can burst and then pivot and make sure they're always able to control those counters. I think Rocket is great as a big money character. He has the 2 thwart that we want. He's really good at bursting damage down and then pivoting for a turn. And I think Groot is more of a build hard mode character. Not that he can't be good, but he's going to struggle a little bit more with this scenario. Next we have Cap, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. I have Cap as I'm going to call him big money, even though he's not big money, just that he has those physical resources. I'm just going to call him a well-rounded character that I think can do really well in this scenario. I think Black Widow is a little bit more of a tempo character. She does have 2 thwarts, she does have access to Confuse, which is very strong, so she's like at the top of B tier for me. I think Hawkeye, unfortunately, is just hard mode in this scenario. It doesn't have great thwart. He can rush, but he can burst and then not pivot and piddle out, and that can be a little bit painful. And then finally, our Maria Hill, Nick Fury, Spider-Man evaluations. Maria Hill is great with the big money. She's great with her 2 thwart. Everything about Maria Hill is great in this scenario. You can also get those really big, expensive supports out for that card that lets you remove a ton of secret counters. Nick Fury has a little bit more of a struggle with his tempo, and Spider-Man can just be really tough. That 1 thwart is really hard to maintain the main scheme. You don't really have the economy. You have that 1 extra card draw from Spider Senses, but you don't have the economy to play your expensive cards and be able to maintain those shield officers, so you're really counting on drawing the right cards from the encounter deck, which means you don't want to cancel treacheries, which is something Spider-Man's great at, so it's a little bit unfortunate for Pete. Alright, let's look at my aspect solution recommendations. Here are 3 Justice cards that I think would be great when going against this scenario. Sonic Rifle from Venom, just to be able to throw a Confuse on Baron Zemo, so if he does get to scheme, you get to cancel it. Allow yourself to flip down and build a little bit more. One way or another, we already mentioned this, 2 of those side schemes remove 1 per player threat from the scenario, so if you can go search for that side scheme and bring it out, that's going to help a lot with being able to control how many counters are on those shield officers. And then I really like the wild resources from the Mad Titan Shadow Wave here, Determination, Injustice, and Audacity when we move to Aggression here. Both help you make progress, but also help you meet those conditions for being able to clean up the shield officers. Also under Aggression, I have Psylocke, dealing damage to Baron Zemo and confusing him in phase 1. Very, very strong. And then I have good old Hall of Heroes from the Valkyrie and Thor pack. You are going to have to defeat some of those minions, and being able to defeat them and then get cards out of them so that you can help trigger those officers is very, very strong. So we want more card draw wherever we can get it. Let's move on to Leadership and Protection. So I have 6-cost Captain America from Leadership because he is great with that 1 Treachery card that lets you discard him and then remove 6 shield officer secret counters. He also has Toughness, so he can block for you and then still get 3 punches in or 3 thwarts in, which can be very powerful. Clarity of Purpose, obviously very strong because it provides that wild resource, making it a lot easier to do the resource matching, not just for the shield officers, but also to prepare to get rid of that Baron Zemo sword. Same reason for Innovation, healing an ally. Wild resources are wild and good. In Protection, this is where the most interesting things came out for me. So I put Return the Favor in here, which is a card I have not run very often. It's a hero action attack, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a Treachery. Reveal that Treachery and deal 5 damage to the villain. If we jump back to the cards from this scenario, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Treachery cards that actually helped us remove encounters. That's amazingly strong, so we get to do something that helps us remove counters and deal 5 damage to the villain. We loves. We also have Unflappable, because I think that you can defend against this character, and that extra card draw can be really important to Protection players, because they're usually playing a lot of the cards from their hand to survive the villain phase and to do their cool things, and then they realize, oh crud, I don't have enough things left to maintain this shield officer that went out of control. For the same reason I have Preemptive Strike. I think when you get to that extra boost card choice in Phase 2, when you get to cancel one of those boost cards and turn it into damage, that becomes a lot more attractive. Alright, the recommended mod set we haven't gone over in this video series, we've already gone over Scientist Supreme, is the Shield set. So this comes with 3 Shield Troopers, which are 0 scheme, 2 attack, 4 health minions with Patrol and Vulnerable, so Patrol can really mess up your main scheme stuff. When defeated, the engaged player discards 1 shield ally or support they control, otherwise placed to threaten the main scheme. So this guy is going to sit out there for a while. But with 0 scheme, you can flip down and be able to ignore them. But because of that patrol, Baron Zemo's scheme is kind of ramp up on the main scheme, so you got to be a little bit careful. We have 1 copy of an Obligation Arrest Warrant, Alter Ego Action, Exhaust Your Identity, or 1 shield card you control. Search the encounter deck and discard pile for a shield minion and reveal it, and then discard this card. So this lets you fish up a shield minion. You don't have a good reason for wanting to do that other than Hall of Heroes, but it does get rid of the arrest warrant. And then we have Disavowed. Increase the resource cost to play each shield card by 1. When revealed, place 1 threat here for each shield card in play with a hazard icon. Something is missing here, my boost icon counter. Let me pull up another tab so I can tell you what's going on with boost icons, because I don't have it in my slide deck for some reason. Alright, so for boost icons, I'm not going to read all the numbers to you, but if you take Baron Zemo, the Shield Executive boss has some extra cards in it. The Scientist Supreme, the Shield set, and the Standard set, and add all of that up, you're going to end up with 4 cards that have 0 boost icons, 12 cards that have 1, 8 cards that have 2, and 4 cards that have 3. And some of the cards that have 2 actually have 2 plus extras from the Scientist Supreme set, so it's a little bit wonky there. That totals to 28 boost icons out of the 40 cards that are getting shuffled in. 40 boost icons out of the 28 cards that are getting shuffled in, which averages out to about a 1.4. So kind of average for this box. We've been wavering between 1.4 and 1.5. Nothing crazy boost icon. So with that, we're ready to get to our archery scale here and see my final thoughts on the Baron Zemo villain. So for Goldilocks difficulty, I'm going to give him a 4. I think this scenario, and I guess I didn't really get to point this out, the scenario really struggles with solo to multiplayer balance. Something that I think is a really hard needle to thread. So here, all of these shield officers flipped at 4 secret counters. And they didn't care how many players were out there, so if you have 4 players, it's a lot easier to maintain those secret counters. Now the threat's going to go up faster, but you also have a higher threat threshold, and you're also going to draw into more cards that help you maintain counters. You're going to have more people to throw damage at Baron Zemo. He is going to get extra activations, but those activations just deal damage and place threat in Phase 1. They don't do much else. So in Phase 1, it's actually a lot easier in multiplayer, which the game of Marvel Champions generally is, but here specifically the scenario hook becomes almost insignificant with more players on the board. The counter to that is when we go to Phase 2 and Baron Zemo starts placing counters for every activation or doing extra boost cards, it becomes more unmanageable in multiplayer. So I'm not a big fan of that difficulty level where like different parts of the scenario are easier for solo or multiplayer. I'd really like to see more cards that like extra abilities for multiplayer to sort of counterbalance the fact that multiplayer can be easier because you can have different deck building and defending and role-like responsibilities. So for that reason, I'm giving it a 4 in Goldilocks difficulty. Next, we're going to go to decision making. I think decision making is a solid 5 here. You've got lots of different options on how to maintain those shield counters. You've got a really interesting decision on defeating the villain versus working on the shield counters versus managing threat. And you get the choice of when to advance the stage, which is very, very powerful. 5 for decision making. Uniqueness, we have never seen something like this before, and I would love to see more of it. So we're going to just go with a 5 there. Thematics, 5 as well. I think that this is very Baron Zemo-like, very like Shield finale-like. It reminds me of the Agents of Shield show finales from each season. So I just absolutely love the thematics of this scenario, which is very important to my heart. Fun factor, I'm going to go with a 4. Mainly I'm docking it again for this solo that can be really oppressive in Phase 1 when you have to do everything yourself. In multiplayer, the fun factor shoots up to a 5 for me, but I do play about half my games solo versus multiplayer, so I feel like it's fair for me to knock it down a little bit because I do have to play some of the solo, or at least half the solo time solo with this villain. So if I add those all up, a 4, a 5, a 5, a 5, and a 4, I get 23 total points, and we'll divide that by the 5 categories to get 4.6 secrets out of 5. Which is very strong for this box. I think we had a 5, a 4.6, a 4.6, maybe a 4.8, maybe a 4.4. Everything in this box, for me, blew it out of the park. So even though this is a 4.6, don't let me make you think that this is a bad scenario by any means. That's still an A in Kennedy Hawk's math class. Alright, so here are my final thoughts. I think this scenario is great, and it has a good twist on classic Marvel Champions. I really enjoy the clue-like minigame. I know other people have rolled their eyes at it. But I think that this is really fun and really creative at FFG. When we get to the campaign video and you get to hear about how this integrates into the campaign, I think it is a blast. And I would love to see more creative, really it's silly to call the game of Clue in Marvel Champions groundbreaking. Groundbreaking might be right, but groundbreaking. But I think it really is. This is a really cool thing that FFG has done with the envelopes and with the production and with the thematics. I feel like they knocked it out of the park with this one. Again, I said it in the archery scale, the solo to multiplayer scaling is a bit wonky, but the scenario is still fun. I just think it's more fun at higher player counts. So I would love to know what you think, what your tips and tricks against Baron Zemo are. And there'll be a poll on the YouTube page when this goes up on Wednesday, having you help me pick what box I should go over with for the villains next. I've really enjoyed making these villain primers, so I want to pick another box and just chug through some of those villains, going back to an old box from Marvel Championsdom to remember how fun that box was and see how it is with the new card pool. So make sure you go to the YouTube community tab and vote in that poll. We'll try to put a link to it in the show notes as well. You may have noticed that there's no gameplay video against a Baron Zemo for today, and that's because all of my cards are packed up in that office back there, because very soon I will be leaving for Con of Heroes, and I didn't want to risk not having my decks packed. But as soon as I'm back, or while at Con of Heroes, I'll make sure we record a Baron Zemo video so we can get it all up on the YouTube channel. So that is it for this week for Kennedy Hawk. We will see you all after Con of Heroes in a couple weeks. See ya!